Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome to this week's edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen, and this week will be potentially a shorter episode compared to the previous ones we've done here on this program. Elimination Chamber is 2 days away, and we'll be getting the preview and predictions for that PLE Premium Live event as we near Montreal for the first time since Breaking Point 2009. And just for fun, as we just kick things off here, I'd like to run down the Breaking Point card as the last pay-per-view that happened in Montreal, September 13th, 2009. Almost 14 years since this last show. We had Jericho defeating the World's Strongest Tag Team, which is MVP and Mark Henry. Kofi Kingston defeated The Miz. Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase defeated DX in a submissions count anywhere match. Kane defeated the Great Khali. Christian defeated William Regal. John Cena defeated Randy Orton in an I Quit match for the WWE title. And then they tried to redo the Montreal screw job with CM Punk defeating The Undertaker in a submission match. I like the Breaking Point concept. I like the submission concept of multiple matches, but I don't know if it really worked the way WWE would have planned or liked. Be that as it may, once again, welcome to the Juice Box. I'm Juice Springsteen. You can follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen or follow my wrestling shirt Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. You can also follow this show at juicysteen.podbean.com. And as always, subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And if you have time, swing by iTunes, leave a rating and review. Appreciate that support if you can give it to us here at the Juice Box. So yeah, we are 2 days away from a hell of a show coming up. The Elimination Chamber pay-per-view generally is just that little, and I don't mean the pun to be here, but that roadblock in between, Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, the fast lane, if you will. But this year it's in Montreal, and the stakes could not be higher. We have Sami Zayn in his hometown, trying to dethrone the head of the table, the tribal chief, easy for me to say, as we were recording this here on February 16th, 2023. This is day 900 of Roman Reigns' WWE Universal Undisputed Championship reign. What an unreal stat that is. 900 days. In 2012, 2013, we were saying, wow, I remember CM Punk had the shirt. I got the shirt for Christmas, I believe, one year. 434 was the reign for CM Punk. And now we're just like, you know what? Nope. 900 days. A legendary reign for a legendary performer, Roman Reigns, and I'll get it out of the way now. I don't think he's going to lose the title at Elimination Chamber, and we'll get to the full predictions to close out the show. Like I said earlier, this is going to be a shorter, probably 30 to 35 minute show, but the predictions and preview for that particular event as we near closer to that will be towards the end. We'll tackle a couple of things from SmackDown and Raw, and of course AEW from last night. As we get closer to Revolution on March 5th, we'll tackle some stuff there, and we'll just kind of bounce around as we normally do here on the show. We'll also do a This Week in Wrestling History, which is one of my favorite times. February is always a time for the Super Bowl, if you're a fan of the National Football League, which Kansas City Chiefs won 38-35 over the Philly Eagles. Fun game to watch. Mahomes gets his second Super Bowl. But for WCW fans like myself, February means something else. Super Brawl. Super Brawl Saturday? Can you afford to pay me to wrestle Ron? I don't know. Super Brawl. One of my favorite WCW pay-per-views to look back on. I will go over one of the particular Super Brawl events that is close to the time that we're recording this. I could have picked a couple of them. In fact, Super Brawl Revenge, I think, which was the last one in 2001, I believe happened the same day as Elimination Chamber will be happening. But that happened in 2001, so 22 years ago. But we'll tackle that in a little bit. First of all, I'd like to just pay respects to the loss of Jerry Jarrett, legendary Memphis promoter, father of Jeff Jarrett. And I might be a little unfamiliar with some of the stuff that Jerry Jarrett did throughout his career, and if anything, I'm unfortunately more up to date with his son's work. But, you know, be that as it may, Jerry Jarrett left a clear mark on the professional wrestling industry, especially with the cable and just TV, and just he kind of changed things, making shows 90 minutes when everybody else was doing 60 minutes, and just it's a pioneer, really, you know, in the wrestling business, and it's sad to see him pass on. But Jeff Jarrett, of course, has been around since, mainstay on TV since around 93, 94. Wrestled on Dynamite last night. So the legacy, of course, will live on through Jeff Jarrett. But once again, thoughts and prayers to the Jarrett family on the passing of the patriarch, legend in the pro wrestling business, Jerry Jarrett. We'll try to go chronologically here. We'll go through a little bit of SmackDown as we come into tomorrow night's SmackDown, which we obviously won't cover. We'll cover more of the Elimination Chamber fallout next week. But Rey Mysterio had an interesting backstage moment with Santos Escobar where they presented each other with Rey gave Escobar his mask after Santos gave Rey his mask. And almost a mutual jersey swap if you're a fan of, traditional American sports. I think even in soccer they do that sometimes where two bigger players will swap jerseys and sign them for each other. They presented each other with their masks here, which I thought was a very interesting storyline development, and I wonder if it'll go further, especially with Dom being such a thorn in Rey's side these days. I wonder if if Santos will have a say going forward with that. But SmackDown, again, we lead up to these shows and there's just so much going on. That was really the highlight for me from SmackDown. And if anything, more stuff happened on Raw that I was interested with. Quick sidebar though over the weekend. If you saw NWA, shout out to Alex Riley, formerly Alex Riley. Kevin Kiley is his new name. Took a tough spill at the NWA pay-per-view over the weekend, so hopefully he's all right and he'll get back in the ring. But yeah, SmackDown didn't have too much that I, they gave me too much substance as we come into the pay-per-view this weekend. Again, it's tough. More stuff will happen tomorrow night as they're emanating from Montreal a day before the big pay-per-view. So tomorrow night we'll have a lot more exciting stuff, I would wager. And we will tap into Monday Night Raw, though, of course, where one of the best things from Raw, let's be real here, was the Seth Rollins. I don't know what to call them. They're these red boots that are really prominent right now. I cannot tell you for the life of me the company that makes the boots, but they're very meme-y right now. And he bought a pair and curb stomped Theory with them as they get ready for the 6-man Elimination Chamber match at the pay-per-view. Again, I say this all the time on this show, and I say it to a lot of my wrestling fan friends. You know, when things are obvious, that's sometimes the best answer. That's sometimes the best choice. So if you're going to do something fashionable that's a meme, that's like funny, but it works with your character and it works with your moveset, those red boots and then hitting a curb stomp, you could not have picked a better combination of things to fall in place for Seth Rollins to do that. So I was thrilled with that. Trying to cover, see what else happened on Raw. The other big point on Raw, Cody Rhodes and Sami Zayn had quite the interaction where, you know, Zayn kind of questioned. Sami wanted to know if Cody really meant that, you know, Sami could defeat Roman and Sami and Cody would have the match at Mania instead of Roman. And, you know, Cody said, I want to see you at WrestleMania. I don't want to see you next week. And they really delivered on the mic. Both those guys are at such a huge level of momentum right now. And they have... It's such a dilemma. It's a great dilemma to have, but, you know, and here's the thing. Triple H has been booking, you know, just before... What was it? Clash of the Castle in September. He's been doing this. He's been having this main part of the gig, and he's got two of maybe the hottest challengers for the championship, regardless of who actually is holding the championship, in Sami and Cody. And you know that Roman has to lose at Mania. If he retains at Mania, I don't know if there's anybody else that could legitimately beat him. But it's like you can't give Sami the title at Chamber because you know that you want to have the moment at Mania. And it's just such a bizarre circumstance for Triple H and those guys with creative to come up with something to please everybody, to make it seem like it's, you know, for it to make sense and for all the fans to be excited about it. And it's a tough but good spot, I think, to be in. Again, we'll get to the preview and predictions in a little bit here towards the end of the program. But we really just had some hype up until the pay-per-view. You know, Rick Boogs defeated The Miz, and Bianca defeated Bayley and Becky, and I don't know. It seems to me that Becky and Bayley are going to have some sort of match at WrestleMania and not be involved with the title, which, again, similar to the problem, quote unquote, that WWE and Triple H and the creative team have with the main men's titles. It's interesting with the women. It's almost as if you have so many challengers potentially for both titles, and you already have Rhea and Charlotte penciled in. Now it seems, okay, once you get someone for Bianca, what are you going to do with some of these other women? And not necessarily are they going to have to be in a tag title spot. You figure, especially with some, you know, women like Becky and Bayley who have such a pedigree, no pun intended, in the singles realm, that they would have some sort of a match regardless if they had to have a title for that or not. And I think that they could pull it off. Now, they already did a cage match, so I don't know what is really left for them to do if they're going to do a Bayley-Becky match at WrestleMania. I don't really know. You got to have stakes. You don't want to just have a match for a match's sake, because you can just do that on Raw. But, again, you got everything else kind of penciled in, and you're going to leave Becky and Bayley off of WrestleMania? You know? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to try to pull off here, but I think that there's ways to do things that would make sense, and I have faith. I have faith in Triple H and the whole regime. But really, nothing else much with Raw. Again, we'll get to the predictions here at the end of the program. I'd like to touch on some other things as we kind of progress through here, because I'd like to get through this week in history and another little top 5 I wanted to get into. The rumor is that there are some WrestleMania Going Hollywood movie trailers, which they did at WrestleMania 21, which I don't know if I've told this story, but if I have, turn it off. Come back later. WCW closes in 01. I don't watch wrestling for 4 years. No Way Out 05 happens in Pittsburgh. I don't go to the show, but I hear about it, and I'm like, oh, that's barbed wire steel cage. That sounds interesting, I got back into it. I was on the John Cena train, and then we, purchased WrestleMania 21 on pay-per-view. Never looked back, and we're in 2023, and I'm doing a podcast. That pay-per-view was in LA, Staples Center. Not quite SoFi Stadium, the magnitude that we'll see on April 1st and April 2nd, 2 nights. But they did the WrestleMania Goes Hollywood movie trailers. Kurt Angle and Christy Hemme doing When Harry Met Sally, and Pulp Fiction and Taxi Driver and Gladiator, and just some incredible movie parodies. They're going to do a few more as we get closer to WrestleMania. I'm sure we'll see some after Elimination Chamber. You might see one during the show after a match. But the rumor is that we're going to get the following 5. The following trailers with the following people in their respective roles. So apparently we're going to get a Top Gun trailer with Miz and Maurice, which that's a great cast selection right there. Rhea Ripley in the Judgment Day doing a Stranger Things parody, which it's not necessarily a movie, but again, we'll see with Netflix and the streaming sites as they come along. 1 hour per episode TV shows are, a full season of that is like 2 or 3 movies if you were to combine them all together. So in a sense, they are movies. So for Rhea and the Judgment Day to do a Stranger Things parody, I think is unreal. I think they could do a lot of fun stuff with that, especially because they're all kids in the show. So I wonder how they'll pull that off, but I have a lot of faith that they will. The Brawling Brutes and Drew McIntyre doing the 40-year-old virgin, which sign me up for that, with Sheamus and Drew being the vets, and you got Butch and Ridge Holland doing some other work. Becky and Seth doing Batman and Joker, and we don't know who would do which. Seth as the Joker would be... I would watch a movie with Seth Rollins as the Joker. I can envision him coming down the stairs like the 2019 Joker. I could see him being a maniac lunatic as the Heath Ledger Joker. I could see him being Batman. But I think Becky's going to be Batman, and I think it's going to be, a top-notch parody. And then, of course, the Bloodline doing Goodfellas, which, you could have picked any mobster movie, any type of family-oriented movie like that, and I think they're going to do a great job. So I'm looking forward to seeing those parodies as we get closer to WrestleMania. Another quick little note. It seems like Jinder Mahal is going to get a NXT title match against Braun Breaker next week on NXT. I think this is a time to take the title off Braun and get him to the main roster so he can have a match at WrestleMania and quickly. I think this is the perfect way to do it. I think Jinder Mahal gets a revitalization as he did in 2017 when he beat Randy Orton for the WWE title. And I think you revitalize the NXT title a little bit. You get Braun to Raw or SmackDown and give him a big high-profile match at WrestleMania. And I think that you get Jinder to eventually lose to a up-and-coming NXT star to give them that rub and go forward. Now, I believe the last time Jinder had a shot at the title, the NXT title was 12/12/2012. Fun note there. And now we'll get to some AEW Dynamite stuff before we close in on some lists and, of course, the Elimination Chamber predictions. AEW last night, 824,000. As the ratings go, and that is a sharp decline from last week. That's about 120,000 at least less viewers last week or this week than last week. I'll just hit some highlights because it's not all about the ratings. Again, I think if they pick up steam towards the pay-per-view, which we got 2 weeks to do so, I think they'll be okay. But Mark Briscoe, who is now officially confirmed All Elite, which I could not be happier about. Of course, AEW has too many guys and girls and too much talent on their roster. Too big of a roster, too bloated of a roster. But Mark Briscoe deserves to be in AEW. Jeff Jarrett wrestled an 8-man tag. They lost, of course, but he wrestled a match, a day after his father passes away. Remarkable there. Adam Cole had an interesting promo with Renee Paquette talking about, looking forward to wrestling again, but who he'll face is up in the air. And we'll figure out who he's going to face as we go forward. But I wonder who they're going to pencil him in against. Maybe it's Jay White. I'd like to see Jay White be All Elite. But I actually would be more interested to see Jay White hop into the WWE realm because I do believe that with the regime of Triple H and the particular type of heavyweight that Jay White is, I think he has a spot on the Raw or SmackDown roster that could really benefit him going forward and the WWE if they play their cards correctly. MJF cut another phenomenal promo this time after Christopher Daniels dressed him down a little bit. And I just am very excited for this 60-minute Iron Man match between Danielson and MJF. I think I've said a couple of weeks now in a row, I think the types of falls you could have in a 60-minute Iron Man match, first one for AEW on pay-per-view, with these two guys, I think there's a lot of avenues you can go down and make it a very exciting match. And when we get closer to that event, I'll let you know what I think. And finally, JR, good old JR, Jim Ross, sat down with Wardlow for an interview. And if you ask me, man, what do you think of a Wardlow interview segment with JR 3 to 4 years ago, I'd be like, man, I don't know if Wardlow's got the skills for that yet. I think he's very new and, as they say, green in the wrestling business. But Wardlow covered how whenever he became a wrestler and got in the business and he was kind of estranged from his father, but his father came back into his life, but soon his father was taken away from him, that Wardlow decided to do things similar to his father, which included things like growing his hair out and his facial hair out and his normal, like his hair out and stuff like that. It's a small touch to him and who he is as a person, but it meant a lot to him with his father, doing the similar stuff before. and before he passed. And Wardlow then tied that in with Samoa Joe took all that away. Samoa Joe took his title, took his hair, took his dignity. Took a lot from Wardlow, and Wardlow is going to get a match against Samoa Joe at Revolution. And I think it's a great story that was told between JR and Wardlow. And I'm looking forward to seeing Wardlow, succeed at the pay-per-view. I think they'll be just as high energy, the crowd at least, for Wardlow as they were leading up to his MJF match and the stuff with MJF and the Powerbomb Symphony. And Wardlow had a lot of momentum, and I think it got taken away, but I got a lot of hope, a lot of promise with the last promo from last night. I really think he's got something going forward that could benefit him with this newfound way of showing how his character can evolve. So good for Wardlow to get that little, again, a couple years ago, and my colleague, Justin LeBar, I would not be doing this show if it weren't for him. I wouldn't be having any sort of platform to discuss wrestling or confidence to discuss wrestling at this level, even though it's a low level, but just doing these types of things all the time. If it weren't for LeBar, he managed Wardlow in a local promotion here, IWC, and I saw Wardlow rise through the ranks, and he was the man with war in his name, and he went to AEW, and now he's killing it. And I love that the progression has steadily inclined throughout the years, and I'm very much looking forward to more success with Wardlow. All right. As we now close here, we close in on the end of this program today. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. First of all, let's do this week in wrestling history. More often than not, it'll be this week in WCW history. But this week in history, I'm going to take you back. February 19th, 1995, Baltimore Arena in Baltimore, Maryland. Super Brawl 5, baby. On the underneath of the card, we had Alex Wright defeating Paul Roma. You had Jim Duggan defeating Bunkhouse Buck. Kevin Sullivan defeating Dave Sullivan. Harlem Heat beating the Nasty Boys. Blacktop Bully defeating Dustin Rhodes, who's still wrestling, by the way. Sting and Randy Savage defeating Avalanche and Big Bubba. But my personal favorite, although it really didn't go anywhere, they had another match at Uncensored and a strap match, and then they had their third and final match at Bash at the Beach in the cage match. Hulk Hogan defeated Vader by DQ to retain the WCW title, but I love Vader-Hogan matches from 95. It was really Hogan's first real test since coming into WCW, because WCW 94, Hogan defeated Flair, and yeah, it was a big deal, but it wasn't a test. He beat him at Bash at the Beach. Then he took his career at Halloween Havoc 94. But his first, and then he defeated the Butcher, a.k.a. Brutus Beefcake, at Starrcade 94. But Super Brawl 5, he had to face Vader, and Vader was stiff. And man, Hulk Hogan had to work. If you've ever seen Hulk Hogan work in Japan and just outside of the North American companies, you could see the range that Hogan really had in ring. And his ability to, that strong style, that stiff, strong style that, Japanese wrestling really provides to someone who might not be as familiar with that type of wrestling. It's a very hard-hitting style, and Hulk Hogan you would not think is a part of that. But when you step in the ring with Vader, you have to step up or get out of the ring. And I thought they brought the best out of each other. And I love those matches. I think you should go back and watch the Super Brawl 5 match, the Uncensored match from 95, and the Bash at the Beach cage match from 95 between Vader and Hogan. Just great big man versus big man, match that they... It's like Hogan Andre, but Andre could move and do a moonsault off the top rope. It's it's that type of chaos that I, thrive in. And those are some people say 95 was a down year for both WCW and WWE. It's understandable, but I find a lot of good stuff out of those years for WCW at least. So that was this week in pro wrestling history. And I'd like to also tap into a quick little note. So we're getting into the Elimination Chamber preview and predictions, but I'd like to tap into what I think is the more exciting portion of the pay-per-view this Sunday, or this Saturday, is the crowd. Like I stated before, this show is taking place in Montreal, Canada, in Quebec, and the Canadian crowds, have always been notoriously excited, incredible, a fever pitch, if you will, and just always the best type of fans. And I, not in any specific order, but I would like to go over what I think are the top 5 greatest crowds in WWE pay-per-view history. I'd like to just go over the not necessarily the cards for each show, but just why those shows had, the type of crowd they did, like where they took place, and just why I think that this weekend could in fact top some of these shows that I'm going to go over. Like, I think that the show this weekend has a chance to blow it out of the water. There's so much at stake with Sami Zayn and being in Montreal with Roman Reigns. I have a tough time thinking that the crowd won't be on Sami's side to such an extent that we might have not seen before, or if we have seen it before, it's been a very, very long time. So first, I'd like to tap in. Let's do these 5 events that I think are the greatest crowds in WWE pay-per-view history. That's just my opinion. First, let's do a recent show, Clash at the Castle. This was the first show to happen in the UK in a stadium since SummerSlam 92. First UK pay-per-view overall since 03 Insurrection. And this thing was unreal. You had the Dom heel turn. You had Gunther and Sheamus in a 19-minute war. Or Dusty Rhodes would like to say, "There's a wall! There's a wall!" Seth Rollins defeated Riddle. You had Roman and Drew in the main event, which I kind of thought Drew was going to take the title from Roman. We all saw the writing on the wall for maybe Roman's going to take this to Mania, but this would be the perfect time to have him lose it. Drew in the UK. It didn't happen. But the crowd was eating everything up. They played the Drew McIntyre original song, Broken Dreams. What a great show that was. And that was the first show under the Triple H regime. So I got a lot of fondness for that show. We'll go into another classic show. This time, a Canadian show. WrestleMania 18, Toronto, 2002. I actually met somebody a couple of months ago that attended this show, and I was floored that they said they went to this show. I was like, man, you don't live in Canada. How the hell did you get there? And he told me how he knew people. It was easier to get there that back then, and man. But this show, of course, is remembered primarily for one match and one match only, and that's The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. The Rock was the face in this match going into it, and Hogan was the heel going into it. Hogan ran Rock over with a semi-trailer truck. Like, unbelievable. But by this match happening, by the time it happened, Hulk Hogan was Hulk Hogan and not Hollywood Hulk Hogan. And the crowd was unglued, hulking up, The camera was shaking. The flash bulbs were going berserk. The hulking up was probably one of the greatest. I'm getting chills right now thinking of the hulking up that Hogan did before getting some shots in on Rock towards the end of that match. But that crowd was unhinged. Let's do a non-traditional WWE pay-per-view, but it's still technically a WWE show. This is ECW One Night Stand 2005, of course, in the Hammerstein Ballroom in Manhattan, New York, New York. I don't know if I have to describe this show, really. I mean, you had, Rey Mysterio versus Psychosis. You had Tajiri, Super Crazy, and Guido, Guerrero, Benoit, Masato Tanaka, and Mike Awesome, and then, Dreamer and Sandman versus the Dudleys. This is such an unreal show. This show was so much fun. I wish the 06 One Night Stand's okay, and it had more of a, this is what we're doing going forward type feel, and it was kind of lame because we knew WWE was going to revive ECW, and it turned out to be terrible, but that show was still dope. This show was supposed to be a one-off after the success of the DVD, Rise and Fall of ECW, that came out the year prior in 04. But my God, every match, every entrance, every move was just met with such fervor and excitement and intensity. You can't ignore it. And the Sandman's entrance, if you can watch the Sandman's entrance from One Night Stand 05, and not from the DVD, from just like a rip from the live feed where Enter Sandman from Metallica plays, this, I would wager, is a top 5 wrestling entrance of all time. So go out and check that out. Last two. We'll do another one from WWE here. This is 2011. We'll close out the top 5 with a Canadian show, of course. Money in the Bank 2011. This is Chicago. This is, one match and one match only. CM Punk defeating John Cena in a classic 5-star match for the WWE title, where if Cena lost, he was fired. Punk was having his contract up at midnight. He won the title, blew a kiss to Vince, got the hell out of there after they tried to get Del Rio in for their cash-in. Unreal. This is just a legendary match. The crowd was just, again, unhinged, unglued, raw, fever pitch all night long leading up to this main event. And it didn't disappoint. They had 2 ladder matches to lead up for it, a world title match, and then boom, a 33-minute main event with Punk and Cena, who were incredible rivals. And I'm upset that they didn't get too many more matches. Although they did get that Raw match in February of 2013, which I should have put that in This Week in Wrestling History, where Punk hit the pile driver. Oh, wow. But yeah, Money in the Bank 2011. And then we'll go to what I think is the best Canadian crowd of, not the modern era, because it happened in 97, but this is In Your House 16, Canadian Stampede. We all know this. Main event, 10-man tag, Hart Foundation, Owen Hart, Jim Neidhart, British Bulldog, Brian Pillman, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, Animal and Hawk, the Legion of Doom, Ken Shamrock, and the man known as Goldust. This was I was talking about the crowd making the camera shake at WrestleMania 18. This is just unbelievable. The crowd makes the camera shake so crazy before the main event even begins, with just the amount of talent, especially all the Canadian talent being in there as the Canadian heroes in a year where Bret Hart was the biggest heel in the WWF if they ran shows in the United States. If they ran a show in Canada, Bret Hart was the greatest babyface in the history of professional wrestling. And that type of dynamic it could not be more described in this particular pay-per-view. And you had some other good matches, including a great Sasuke versus Takamichinoku singles match, which I find is a very underrated gem of this time period. You didn't get a lot of light heavyweight action in the WWF. The WCW Cruiserweight division, legendary, talked about it a lot. reinvented everything. It's what everybody does now. But the light heavyweights in WWF, Taka versus Great Sasuke, fantastic match. I'd go out of my way to watch that pay-per-view again just to see that. And, of course, the main event. Leads us into the main course. Try to do this in like 10 minutes or less. We've got Elimination Chamber, PLE, premium live event this Saturday, Montreal. We got Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley. In just a straight-up singles match, I actually think Bobby Lashley's going to defeat Brock here. I think the crowd is going to be hot all night. I don't know what's going to open the show. I would assume it's an Elimination Chamber match. But Bobby and Brock have had walls before, and I don't think this is going to be any different. I think they're going to have a knockdown, drag-out fight, and I do believe that Bobby Lashley has some promising stuff coming towards Mania, so I think he's going to get the win and some momentum here. I really do. And hopefully we get Brock Lesnar versus Gunther at Mania, but I'm not going to hold my breath. We'll go through the mixed tag match. We got Edge and Beth Phoenix versus the Judgment Day, which is Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley with Dom and Damian Priest outside, of course. And I'm going to go ahead and say that Finn Balor and Rhea Ripley win this match. I don't know how this is all going to play out, but I do believe that regardless of the result, that's why I was kind of hesitant. I do think that at WrestleMania, we're going to see Demon Finn Balor versus a Brood version of Edge. So however they need to get to that, I think that's the way they're going to roll. Let's do the Elimination Chamber match for a Raw Women's title match at WrestleMania 39. Carmella, Natalya, Raquel Rodriguez, Nikki Cross, Liv Morgan, and Asuka. Oh, man. This and the regular chamber match, I think, are crapshoots. Now, the main chamber match for the United States title, I think I have a little bit of better idea of certain things that could happen. But for the women's, I really don't know. I think the best match for WrestleMania would be Bianca Belair versus Asuka. But I would really like to see... I kind of would like to see Raquel Rodriguez in the spot against Bianca because I think she's almost a more credible threat. But I'm going to go with Asuka winning the chamber match and going on to face Bianca Belair at WrestleMania and maybe finally taking the title off Bianca. It's been a long time, but Asuka has this new vintage look to her, a previous Kana character look that she had in her earlier work, and I think Asuka's going to get the win. We'll do the United States title Elimination Chamber match first and foremost. I'd like to say I love that this title gets an elevated spot on the card. I love that since Triple H has been around this realm, this regime, that the title has been elevated to a point now where a chamber match is not going to be for who gets a shot at the WWE title or whatever the world title is at the moment, but it's going to be for the U.S. title. And these 6 guys, I think, are going to put on a hell of a match. You got Austin Theory defending against Seth freaking Rollins, Johnny Gargano, Bronson Reed, Damian Priest, and Montez Ford. So here's my predictions for this whole match. I think Bronson Reed has a great performance, finally on a pay-per-view stage. I think he's going to take someone through a pod. I think that's an obvious prediction. I think somehow Dexter Lumis could get involved with the Johnny Gargano of it all, or like appear through a pod or through the floor, some weird way of putting himself involved in the match. I think somehow Logan Paul could show up and interfere and cost Seth Rollins. I also think Austin Theory could have a distraction, maybe in regards to a John Cena appearance. It's Montreal. I'm not holding anything, as impossible here. And I think I'm going to put it down right now. I think this is what's going to happen. I don't think Theory needs a title to face Cena. I am going on record and predicting that Montez Ford will hit a frog splash off the top of a pod to win the United States title and have a defense at WrestleMania, potentially against Angelo Dawkins, which would be a great, great story. And it'd be nice to see Bianca and Montez go into WrestleMania as champions. But here we go. Sami Zayn in Montreal with everybody in his province and country rooting for him against the head of the table, the tribal chief, the greatest member of the Shield, the man who has the longest title reign in the modern era and the greatest title reign of the last 35 years, Roman Reigns. And unfortunately, I don't think Sami Zayn's going to win the championship. However, I think there's a definite chance that, which kind of contradicts itself, but you know what I meant. I think we get a spot in the match where Sami Zayn has Roman down, whether it's KO, an inadvertent Jey Uso, or on purpose Jey Uso interference, something to that regard. And it's been rumored that the Usos are fine. They should be both in Canada. But something happens to where the referee is down, but Reigns is down too, and Sami has the cover, and the crowd is screaming, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it not happening. And if anything, I think if Jey would help Sami, I think Jimmy would end up hurting Sami and end up costing him the title, which, in a roundabout way, I think after this match, you get the seeds planted for the Usos versus Sami and KO at WrestleMania. I think there's an outside shot we see Cody get involved in this match. I somehow still think there's an outside chance you see The Rock at this pay-per-view in this match. This is the last chance. If The Rock is going to be a part of this WrestleMania Bloodline storyline, which we've been saying for well over a year now, this is the last chance. It's a rabid crowd. It's a crowd that hasn't had a pay-per-view in 14 years. It's a country where The Rock had one of his greatest moments at Mania 18 in Toronto, of course, but The Rock has a history. But I think when it's all said and done, the one thing that we can not just predict but spoil for the rest of the audience is that it's not going to be another Montreal screw job. But unfortunately for Sami Zayn, it's going to be a Montreal mauling. And we will see Roman Reigns standing tall at the end of the night as the undisputed WWE Universal Champion. But, like I said, I think there's a shot we see Cody. I think there's a shot we see The Rock. I think the Usos and Solo and KO, there's going to be a lot of chaos, and as Pat Patterson would refer to as gaga in this match. But I think it's going to be, as it was at Royal Rumble, I think it's going to be legendary storytelling. I think it's going to be a legendary crowd. And I think it's going to be a match and moment at a not just non-WrestleMania, and not just Big 4/5 show. I think this is going to be a moment in time. This match will be a moment that us as wrestling fans will gravitate towards and remember for a very, very long time. So I'm going to go with Roman Reigns retaining the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. But damn, cannot wait. Elimination Chamber this Saturday. Can't wait to watch it. I think I'm going to be in attendance with some Chairshot Reality members. Little blast from the past action. Cannot wait. Should be a fun show. Fun crowd, incredible night. And yeah, next week we'll have the results and some feedback, some reactions to the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view that happens on Saturday. As we will be about a week and a half out of Revolution, the AEW next show, and we'll be officially on the final road to WrestleMania, with WrestleMania being the next show after Elimination Chamber. So next week should be fun. Saturday should be incredibly fun, and I hope you guys all enjoy it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this show. I said this is going to be a 30-minute show. We're upwards of 51 minutes. But I love talking wrestling. Hope you guys picked up on that as you've been hopefully subscribed and listened to the last couple of weeks as we've been getting this rickety show up and running and keeping the oil in the machine and still trying to plug along every week. Hopefully you guys are enjoying what you're hearing. I'm enjoying talking about it. You can follow me, as always, on Twitter at JuicySteen or my wrestling t-shirt Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. And as always, JuicySteen.podbean.com. Rate and review this 5 stars on iTunes and follow this show on Apple iTunes, on the podcast app, wherever you find, if you have that podcast app. And cannot wait. This is always a fun time of year, and Saturday should be unreal. Montreal, Sammy, Roman. Whew, we are in for something special, baby. This is going to be wild. So, all right. This has been the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. See you guys next week. That was the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to the Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.